Are you ready? My name is Chris, and I am the real revolutionary. For nearly a quarter of a century, I have been standing up for equality and freedom by protesting against war and inaction on climate change, among other things. But I am here now to share my real revolutionary story. I called it that because it is a true story and I wrote it to change the world. Also, Bob Marley sang about the real revolutionary on the album Survival. My story is about survival. It will be told in 4 episodes and is partly based on an old story, the oldest of stories in fact. But my story is the real story, the true story, and then some. Of course, it is said that the truth can be subjective, and never more so in these modern times of AI, fake news, targeted political advertising, the reduction of fact-checking on social media, and corruption and bias in the mainstream media. Nevertheless, I believe my story is the truth. I also believe I can prove it. The first 3 episodes of my story are each in chronological order, as I believe time is the most valuable measure of existence. But to tell this story in time, I do need to start at the beginning of it. That does mean talking a little bit of physics. Very simple physics. But before I do that, I ought to state that, in my view, God, as presented in the Torah, Bible and Quran, does actually exist, but not actually as presented in the Torah, Bible and Quran. This will become less opaque as I go on, but I have stated it now as it does relate to the 2 main reasons why I am telling this story at this time. Even so, there are of course many different perceptions of God. Different faiths idolize other divine figures, and the concept of a God or creator is one that we had perceived of prior to our civilization. Many societies and cultures have an origin story that begins with the act of a being of some sort. Many also have a theme of universal connection, of an ethereal energy that pervades all existence. In some religions or social practices, that energy, Holy Spirit or universal consciousness, replaces the creator or God figure altogether. However, it is not quite time for that story yet, and it is not really my biggest concern either. Our planet is now changing, and whether we believe it or not, we do have to adapt our patterns of life in order to survive those changes. Life on our planet is founded on the principle that it evolves by adapting to the environment of which it is an intricate part. Our civilization was founded on the principle we can own the land we live on and trade the resources we take from it for the betterment of ourselves and our kin. We have evolved to become the most intelligent and adaptable species on this planet. but have developed our civilization without any real regard for our environment. We have in fact completely changed the environment through our industrialization of agriculture and our own actions within society, and created many imbalances and injustices in our ecological and socio-economic systems as a result. We can no longer afford to live like this. Also, we are continuing to bear witness to a genocide. A genocide perpetrated by the Israeli Defense Forces, supported by countries like the US and UK, supplying weapon systems and military assistance. Some of the most developed countries in the world practically enabling one of the most heinous crimes in the world, and yet that story is hardly mentioned in the mainstream media. Sadly, this is nothing new. Our society is built upon many false perceptions, mistruths and lies, and has been for a very long time. In fact, it seems to me as if in modern civilized society, the truth has no relevant worth or value at all. In reality, no matter what we each choose to believe, our species does only have one true history. That history does include the 4 visits of God with Abraham, Moses, Mary and Muhammad. But the fact is, our universe began long before any God appeared in it. Moreover, our history includes several earlier periods of climate change through which our species did evolve. Plus, we are now starting to work out what the hippies have been saying for decades, and our indigenous populations have been trying to teach us for much longer. It is also what I believe God visited our planet to share with us. Fundamentally, physics, philosophy, spirituality and theology all point us to the same conclusion: that the energy that defines our existence is unpredictable, unattainable, unimaginable, and yet utterly universal. Also, that it is real, and, to a degree, measurable. Now I have said all those things, I can begin my story. In the beginning, there was light. That light condensed into a form we call a singularity. After numerous resonating oscillations in space-time, that singularity reached a state of expansion which forced it beyond its limits of recoil. It stretched beyond the point of its own retention and began to continuously expand. The light energy of that singularity, from the moment it burst, began to snap off or fracture at the centre, leaving a stretching skin of light at its outermost edge, which is perpetually breaking down, and an increasing number of strings of light filling the space within. All of existence is made up of these strings of light, which break away from the barrier and combine to form spinning, pulsing quarks of energy. Some of these quarks form the atoms that form the elements of our universe. The rest are basically dark matter, or light without form. Black holes break it all back down and return it to the boundary, pulling it and reforming back into it to create a cycle of energy that sustains itself through expansion. In essence, everything is made up of the light of our universal existence. It is every cloud of gas, every drop of liquid, every particle of matter, everything. Everything is light. As such, and a long, long time after the universe began, galaxies and solar systems formed, and nutrient-rich liquid water on at least one planet allowed for the formation of proteins and amino acids, which combined and were able to reproduce energy in their new form. Some scientists think the chances of the right protein and right amino acid evolving in the same body of liquid and combining to create life are very remote and unlikely to happen on other planets, even if they have nutrient-rich liquid water. I disagree. I think proteins and amino acids might come together and create all sorts of wondrous forms of life. Just like different strings of light fit together in different ways to create different quarks or little bits of energy. Some of those quarks form to make protons and neutrons, which form the nuclei of the atoms of the 94 natural elements of our universe. Those elements are measurable in time, but other forms of light are not, just as some forms of life may persist through time, but some may not. We are one that has, along with the bacteria, fungi, flora and fauna, trees, bugs, fish, bats, birds and bees. So, here we are, an evolved species of life on Earth, having survived numerous extinction events until finally walking on the land on two legs, learning new skills to help us adapt to the new environments we encounter on our journeys, and mixing our ancestries until becoming recognizable as modern humans, or Homo sapiens, or even Homo sapiens sapiens to be accurate. That is the story of nearly the whole of our existence. Some 13.75 billion years or so. We spent a few million years evolving into modern humans from apes that learnt to walk upright on the land. We spent several 100,000 years learning how to survive in new environments until, sometime around 15,000 years ago, a few of us modern humans settled onto fertile land in the Middle East and began to farm crops season upon season, year after year. We have not evolved much since then. Every generation experiences and learns a little bit more, and those perceptions make their way into our consciousnesses over time. But physically and mentally, we are really no more evolved than we were at the birth of our agricultural societies. The biggest difference is the amount that we know about the world we live in. Of course, what we know and what we believe are not necessarily the same things. Those differences have caused a lot of our social problems. We keep gaining knowledge, but many of our beliefs and actions are based on old perceptions of worth measured by an unnatural value, and stories about God that happened a long time ago and of which there is little known physical proof. However, the fact is, proof of God does exist. But that proof does not reveal God to be the creator of the universe, or even an omnipotent consciousness seated in a garden of flawless beauty. God's first intervention was when Babylon, the first city of civilization, became visible from space at night. On that first visit, the being we call God showed Abraham Earth from space. They told us about the universe, how the light of its initial form makes up all of its existence. They told us about the evolved nature of life and the connection we share with everything around us, warning us to live in balance with our environment because it has the ability to change. It took God 6 days to explain all that. After a day of rest, they left, implying they would return. When God did return, to find Moses living as a slave in Egypt, like many people in many other societies, they made use of a few natural disasters to free Moses and guide them on a journey home. God also shared their knowledge on the similarities between humans and other living beings, and then, dissecting some of our own behaviours as a species, gave Moses a set of values to shape a better balanced and less harmful society. God did not promise Moses eternal rights to their homeland, but did promise that they would return again. On that third visit, God was unsurprised to find we had not paid attention to their lessons about our misplaced values or personal excesses, covetous behaviour, or ignorance of the needs of others. So they delivered a means to prove their knowledge of life and existence, both at that time and at a time in the future. When they came back again to see if much attention was paid to Mary's virgin-born child, our supposed God told Muhammad a story that reflected our own beliefs, in the hope that we might finally come to understand the mistakes of our early developments and learn to live in harmony with each other, our environment, and the life of it. They left that time, never to return. 1400 years later, there are wars and famine, poverty and pestilence. We are seeing increasing numbers of enormous floods and huge fires right around the globe, and, really and truly, it is because we have raised the greatest of false idols. And I don't mean Trump or Musk or any other celebrity or AI. The God we worship is money, and we have destroyed the earth because we have learned to trade its diverse bounty for a made-up value that some people can accumulate in vast amounts, whilst others cannot get enough to buy food for their family. Using an unnatural currency like money, as a means to try to balance our existence, is, to all intents and purposes, the equivalent of unleashing the angel of death on a planet with life. Whatever we believe about God, about the economic system, about genocide, about rising fascism, about AI or social media or microplastics or air travel or the fashion industry or food production, our biggest problem is, and actually always has been, our changing environment. Evolution is the consequence of the adaptation of a species to changes in their environment. It is the same for all life on all planets where life exists. Planetary environments have the ability to change, and life has to change with them. If it does not, it may not survive. To be forewarned of this prospect was a blessing. To ignore that advice is a sin. I am revealing this story now because, unlike most other protesters, I do have a solution to our problems. I cannot stop the wars or begin to end climate change, but I can explain how to use a natural measure of value as the currency in an economic system that is socially balanced and efficiently controls the use of Earth's resources in a sustainable manner. Plus, I can also prove the existence of God. That is, of course, if I'm not arrested, in prison, or otherwise seen off before I finish my story. Even so, you have probably listened enough for now. In the next episode, part 2 of 4, I will explain the truth about the virgin birth, what Christ got up to during their teens and 20s, and how it all leads to proof of God's being. For now, I just want to say thanks for watching, and I hope you join me again, whereupon I will go on to explain how we can actually change society. My name is Chris Maunder. I am the real revolutionary, and this is my story.